There are thousands of families in leasehold homes who cannot sell because the length of the lease isn't long enough or they face a huge bill for extending it. Will they be helped by new proposals today from the Law Commission? Claer Barrett is the personal finance editor of the Financial Times. Before we come to the proposed solution, how big is the problem?
Well, Eddie, around 4 million people in England and Wales own their property on a leasehold basis. Now, the majority of them are flats, but quite a few in recent years have been new build homes. Now, there are two ways at the moment that you can own a property. You can own it freehold, which basically means that you own the building and the land pretty much forever, or you can have a lease. If you've got a leasehold property, you're buying the right to occupy that building for a set period. So once the clock starts, the years clock down and it's a wasting asset. So eventually your right to occupy it is going to run out. Guess what? If you want to extend it, you have to pay. And there are all kinds of other charges that the freeholder can levy on you as well. Annual maintenance, known as a service charge. Everybody in a flat, including me, pays that. And often the bills are much higher than we would like and there's not much we can do about it. Look at all of the problem with paying for big renovations, like people who are living in leasehold flats that have got unsafe cladding after the Grenfell fire. And they're having to pay for the cost of repairing that, not the freeholder. But the thing that has really caused the Law Commission to sink its teeth in is the ground rent. Now, this used to be a nominal sum. People called it a peppercorn rent, sometimes a ground rent, because it literally was, a nominal amount of money. But in recent years, the house builders have thought, we can make some money out of this. So every year, the leaseholder has to pay a small charge to the freeholder just for the privilege of occupying their flat. Now, some of the ones that have been sold recently that you referenced, they start off at £295 a year, say. Doesn't sound like much, but they double every 10 years. And people have unwittingly bought them, not realising that by 50 years later, that £295 a year will be nearly £10,000 a year. So all of a sudden their properties become unsaleable because nobody else wants to buy it from them, hence the review.
How does the Law Commission think this can be solved? Will the Russians pay?
No, for once, it's not down to the Russians. Now, it's a really tricky area of law, as you've probably gathered from the cat-candid way that I've explained it. But it's taken them 2 years to do this review. They think if we replace leasehold with a fairer system called Commonhold, which does exist, but at the moment nobody uses it because it's a bit unwieldy, that would give leaseholders more rights. They wouldn't have to pay a ground rent. They would have more control over how much service charge they were paid, and any attempt to extract a fee from a freeholder or an investor that they had sold the right to collect money onto would be much more carefully monitored. Now, of course, that doesn't affect the 4 million people who are already living in leasehold, but the Commission proposes to make it easier and cheaper for them to either buy out their freeholds or extend their lease. And at the moment, it's so hard to do this. And also, leaseholders are massively disadvantaged because if they want to take their landlord to court to try and buy the freehold, which is known as enfranchisement, they have to pay the landlord's legal fees, which can be absolutely prohibitive. So it's very, very difficult for people to make money. But obviously, there's going to be a cost to this. The government will consider the proposals, doesn't have to act on them. I'm sure the house builders, however, will be lobbying against them because they're the ones who've been able to make money by selling buildings on leasehold as opposed to freehold. All the share prices of the UK's major house builders are slightly off today on a day when the FTSE 100 index has gone up. So I think they'll probably be lobbying quite strongly against these proposals. So we'll have to wait and see whether they're adopted or not.
Thank you, Claer. And before you go, you're too modest to mention it. I know you've been nominated for an award.
I have, Eddie, and I'm really proud to say it's for Financial Broadcaster of the Year. I'm up against...
How did that happen?
I know, I'm up against some stiff competition, lots of other journalists, money journalists who I know, but I'm just really, really happy to have made the list and making hard things easier to understand for normal people. That's what I try and do every day, and if they think that I'm good enough to win, then brilliant. If not, then, we'll all have a drink and it will still be fun.
It's an honour just to be nominated, and that's a huge lie. That's Claer Barrett, personal finance editor of the Financial Times.